to its unwillingness to explain anything about the circumstances of the Civil War, why these sides are fighting each other to begin with, providing any semblance of context for why anything is happening for any given reason. This film just comes across as a generic, mediocre Call of Duty campaign with occasional, and when I say occasional, Chad, I'm emphasizing occasional moments of spectacle and a handful of tense scenes. I got to take that back. That's not fair to Call of Duty. Call of Duty has actually commented and weaved political, cultural, and societal messages in a number of its single-player campaigns actually well. And those should be praised, and those should be highlighted. Civil War does none of those things. So here we are, my friends. Civil War has finally been released in theaters after much anticipation, anger, and fear over its announcement and trailers. A film that depicts a conflict within the United States coming out during a fraught presidential election year with many people angry on both sides of the political spectrum. When the trailers were being released, we saw a variety of reactions to them. Some people were enthused, others were scared, and some were even angry over a possible future of a second American Civil War. And both sides, again, of the political spectrum had all these same reactions. There was never a sense of consistency on either side or anything in between, which I honestly found very amusing. It was amusing to me. Now, I'm very proud of the fact from the get-go, when I first saw this trailer for Alex Garland's Civil War, that I thought it looked extremely silly. And I've maintained that mindset leading up. I've maintained that opinion leading up to its release. You can go back and look through my content and my trailer reactions and the conversations that we've had and see that's how I felt the entire time about it. And that this film's seemingly odd choices, premise, and self-seriousness were coming off unintentionally funny to me via its trailers and what the filmmakers were saying about the movie. From a California and Texas alliance against a fascist president played by Nick Offerman to its apparent unwillingness to explain anything about its setting and world. I started to grow increasingly just kind of befuddled around the fear and resentment that some people were saying this movie would create. Well, I've seen the movie, and I have a lot to say about Garland's supposedly last. And at this point, I'm going to tell you right now, I surely hope it is his last directorial effort. But before getting into the silly antics of Civil War, let me provide you with a synopsis. Set in a not-too-distant future America, a team of war photographers and journalists embark on a perilous journey across a war-torn United States in order to interview the president before various rebel factions descend upon the Capitol and the White House. So I'm going to get this out of the way very quickly. While the film is definitely capitalizing on the cultural and political tension of an election year in the United States for marketing purposes, which to me is kind of shitty, the film itself is a toothless and hollow war movie that seems terrified of its own shadow most of the time, due to its unwillingness to explain anything about the circumstances of the Civil War, why these sides are fighting each other to begin with, providing any semblance of context for why anything is happening for any given reason. This film just comes across as a generic, mediocre Call of Duty campaign with occasional, and when I say occasional, Chad, I'm emphasizing occasional moments of spectacle and a handful of tense scenes. I got to take that back. That's not fair to Call of Duty. Call of Duty has actually commented and weaved political, cultural, and societal messages in a number of its single-player campaigns actually well. And those should be praised, and those should be highlighted. Civil War does none of those things. Outside of maybe saying war is always bad, which is not always true, and seemingly alleges that wartime journalists and photographers become desensitized to violence, which I'm also unsure about. Like, the message of this movie is like, war's bad, okay? That's what this movie's saying. That's the entire gist of the film. It says there's a Civil War conflict, does not make any attempt to explain why it's happening or what's going on, and it just has this constant sense of self-importance, self-seriousness that will often make the film itself feel very poorly paced, ponderous, and on a number of occasions, unintentionally funny and very goofy. The performances of the cast, outside of a few exceptions, isn't really interesting at all. Kristen Dunst plays Lee, this renowned wartime photojournalist. You know, she's leading this band of journalists across the country to interview the president. And I just found her and most of the people that joined her on her journey just kind of dull. And you have a number of talented people with her, too. You have, like, Wagner Moura, who's been popping up in so many great things over the last few years. He was excellent as Pablo Escobar in Narcos. Loved him there. He played the Wolf Death in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. He was most recently in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and he did a great job. And then you also have Stephen McKinley Henderson, who's been around for, God, so many years and is typically always very good in the things that he appears in. But the conversations that they have with each other as they're on the road are just boring. They don't reveal anything interesting about themselves, and they just feel like filler until we eventually get to the next action scene or tense moments with combatants we know absolutely nothing about. The absolute worst character and performance in this movie is provided by Kaylee Spaney as Jessie, who is this aspiring journalist and photographer who tags along with them, who they don't even want. I do have certain pet peeves in films, and a big one for me is the bratty, precocious kid who constantly gets others and themselves into danger. And she does all of that in this movie. Her character simply exists to create faux conflict when it's not even necessary. And you just grow to resent her presence and purpose in the film because she has no purpose other than to be annoying and be the entitled audience avatar character. That's all she's there for. That's all she's there for. The one big exception, though, the one big positive to the cast is Jesse Plemons, who plays an unnamed soldier they encounter on their journey. Plemons is a great actor, and he's wonderful at playing absolutely insane creeps. Long career, whether it be in Breaking Bad or in Game Night, he's great. And that's on obvious display in the scene he's featured in. Now, he's not in the movie for very long, but he makes the most of that moment, and it's incredibly intense, and it's the highlight of the entire film. Originally, I read about this before before doing my review today, after I got back from the theater. He wasn't even supposed to be in the movie, since the actor they wanted for that scene wasn't available, and Dunst, who's married to Plemons, asked if he couldn't do it, and he nailed it, and I'm sure she nailed him afterwards because he was great. I was like, no wonder he was featured in so many of the trailers, because they knew they had something with him there. It's the best part of the movie, and then the rest of the movie happens. The ending of the movie is pretty much a Call of Duty campaign and involves the final conflict, the final assault on Washington, D.C. and the White House. But as cool as the spectacle of that could be, it's just undone by terrible writing directing and Spacey's character of Jesse, who just, again, permanently exists to annoy viewers and do excruciatingly dumb things when it's not necessary to do so. Again, to create that faux conflict. I'll admit, I was actually enjoying the film's bonkers and very silly third act to a degree, such as it was presenting itself. But it completely flubs it by doing something so stupid in regards to several of its characters, and it just left me feeling exasperated more than anything else. And this is the other thing, because I was curious about, like, okay, how are people feeling about this movie? And, you know, a lot of people were praising it, saying this is the war movie of our times, the war movie of the decade. Like, that's what they were all fucking saying when they got out of the festival when this premiered at South by Southwest. But I did notice a lot of these user reviews, and where they were saying, like, oh, this movie, they were saying one of two things. They were saying this movie is liberal propaganda, or they were saying this movie is conservative propaganda. And I'm like, you did not see the movie, or you are reading into something, because it's none of those things. It's absolutely none of those things. So all those reviews and opinions are like, you get out of here, because the movie doesn't comment. The movie and the people that made it, namely Alex Garland, are too cowardly or just unwilling to do anything really interesting outside of making the vaguest of allusions to real life parallels. It is what I figured it would be. A very goofy and silly movie that thinks it has something serious to say, but in reality, it has nothing to say at all. It is a vapid movie, and one that I just kind of perplexed by the fear surrounding. It just doesn't make any sense. It is what it is. It's just this toothless, you know, opinionless war movie, because I don't know, I think a lot of war movies do weave politics through their narratives. I think that's one of the things that make a lot of war movies great, is when they have that woven through the narrative and they showcase that through its characters and how these characters interact with each other. This is the war movie that just doesn't do that. And that's why it's just empty. That's why at the end of everything that they ended up doing, you know, in Washington, D.C., and the final shots and the final moments with some of these characters, is like, I felt absolutely nothing, because the movie is literally about nothing. But that's my opinion on the movie. What about you guys? I know I've seen a lot of people saying this movie's great. I've seen a lot of people saying this movie is terrible, and, you know, they're imposing whatever political spectrum that they're on this movie. This is what this means. That's what this means. For me, it's just like, it's not imposing anything. I think it's capitalizing on people's fear and resentment around an election cycle, but it has nothing else to say outside of that. Outside of war's bad, which I also take issue with. If it's presenting the idea that war is always bad, I'm like, no. There have been incredibly just wars throughout history. Like World War II was a just war. You had Allied forces fighting a fucking genocidal maniac and his allies, and put a stop to it. Of course, there were things done during that war that were abominable, such as the internment of Japanese Americans. Absolutely. But to say that World War II was like, war's just bad in general, it's like, no. I think that is such a lazy, that is, and just like painting with a wide brush to say, like, oh, war's bad, or that everyone becomes desensitized to war, that photojournalists or journalists themselves become desensitized. I want to hear from them. I want to hear from them if that's true, that they just become desensitized and they don't really care. It's all about their careers and things. I don't know if that's true. I am highly suspect on that. But again, I just like this movie. I just like this movie because it's lazy. And last thing I'll say is Alex Garland has he has said, this is probably my last directorial film, my last directorial effort. I'm like, you know what? Good fucking riddance. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. You know, stick to writing, man, or maybe leave Hollywood altogether. I think that'll be fantastic in my book. But how do you guys feel about Civil War?
5 minutes later.
Maybe there'll be a civil war in my chat right now. Oh man, did Keith David show up to defend Burgertown? Man, there's like a moment in this film where it's like we're at Burgertown right now. It feels like that. He was very fun in game night. Oh, I thought the action was very well directed. I thought that there are moments when I feel like it's well directed, but there's a lot of stuff in the end which involves a very specific character who is constantly putting themselves in danger when they don't need to do that, that I did not think was well directed. That's what I'll say. Didn't even have the balls to shine a spotlight into issues. No, it didn't. It's so apolitical. It's like, I wish you would have at least said something, or whatever. I mean, at this point, I don't care if it's liberal or conservative. Just have something to say, at all. It just doesn't. It has nothing to say, which is I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Some of our definition is pretty political. I know. I know. If you read the politics for it, then you just have a war point. Yeah, that's what it kind of is. Nick Diaz, hi. I feel like I'm going to feel the exact same way about this movie. Yeah, good to see you, Mr. Diaz. Hope you're doing well. So I understand what the president did and the ending was. So the ending's bad. Yeah, it has a really bad ending. The most political they get, this spoiler, whatever, is that they do state that Nick Offerman as the president, or some people say that it's just it's their opinion. He's become a fascist and he's in his third term. That's the most political movie ever gets, because you have these different forces. They have the California-Texas alliance, you have the Florida alliance, you have this other alliance, and you have the loyalist forces to the president. And so you have these 4 different organizations at war with each other or allied with each other. But you don't even, that thing is, I don't even know. You don't even know, when they encounter some of these combatants, when they encounter some of these people, you don't know what side they're even on. So it's what, I don't understand. And that's what I'm talking about. It has awful world building. It is some of the worst world building I've ever seen in a film, certainly this year, or in a war movie. It's just what's the context for this world? I just don't understand. Drew McQuarrie is I don't give a shit. I mean, they don't either. John Olney, I might see it this week. Let me know what you think. Has ever seen this movie anyways? I don't think it's the worst thing I've seen this year. Night Swim is no, I don't think it's the worst thing. No, I don't think it's the worst movie this year. Yes, I think movies like Night Swim and Argyle and Madam Web, these are all as films, they're worse than Civil War. I don't think Civil War is very good, but unlike those movies, at least those movies were trying to say something. I guess. Yeah, man. Respectfully, I disagree. Even though I wish some elements would have been fleshed out, I thought it was very soft. Fair enough. Yeah, we're just on opposite sides. Civil War. Agree, disagree. So I take now. It's a good time to bring up Spinny's also going to be the lead in that Alien movie. Is that her? Oh, she's going to Priscilla in Bad Times All Around. I'm going to tell you right now, I guess this was my first time being exposed to her. Now again, it's the material. The character, I hate the fact that the character is written to be stupid. It's just that's her function, is to be dumb. And I'm just, that really annoys me. It's oh my God. And they just, because how dumb they are, they create the conflict so often that we see in this movie. And it's just it's not necessary to write her this way. And so I'm not attacking the actress, but the character sucks. Really sucks.